everyone, it's Liz, the Frugal Libertarian. I am back. I apologize. I was sick and couldn't really film for about a week and a half, so I apologize that the new material stalled out, but I am back and I will be giving you your 3 videos a week. I wanted to talk today about libertarian-leaning television programs and the different ones there are and which ones are more libertarian than others, which ones are sort of kind of surprises that they had libertarian content in them or libertarian philosophies in them, so that if you've never really seen it play out, you can go and watch the shows yourself. So I'm going to start with the big 3 that are like the granddaddies of all libertarian TV. I would say the most obvious one is Stossel, which was on the Fox Business News. They still air it, but John Stossel has since retired and is no longer producing new shows. John Stossel is a libertarian. I was first introduced to his content in high school, believe it or not, by our child development teacher. She used one of his specials on the differences, the innate biological differences between boys and girls, and I just thought he was cool. And then when I got older, I read his books, and then when he got that show, I started watching it, and he was awesome. It is still in rerun, so you can watch it. A lot of the content that's sort of the anti-government red tape, you know, pro-small business, pro-individual rights, that is still there. So if you get the Fox Business News channel, you can still watch it or DVR it still on Friday nights. Another granddaddy of libertarian TV is Penn and Teller's bullshit. And I apologize for the people who don't like to hear that kind of language. I am not saying this to incite you, I'm just telling you the name of the show. They came at it for a few seasons on Showtime with a very small show run each season, and they would take topics specific to libertarian philosophy and to their own personal opinions of things, and then would expand upon it for a half an hour. They also gave you, of course, being Showtime, copious amounts of swearing, nudity, things like that that would be more controversial somewhere else in some other forum, but they kind of use that to their benefit as well to try to get more attention and everything. They talk a lot about things like taxation. They did an episode on gun control. They did an episode on video game violence that I thought was unbelievably excellent. They did one on, you know, conspiracy theories, which was pretty good. They did one on all of the setbacks of the 9/11 memorial back in the day. I mean, it was so, they ran, I believe, for 8 years. I think there's 8 seasons, and it's just such a good show. And they did so many topics that it really, it's just so vast and good, and it really presents it both in a silly way. I mean, there's a lot of jokes being made, of course. There's a lot of visual metaphors. It's silly, and they're doing things to grab your attention, but the information they're giving you is really good, and the content they're giving you is really good. Now, the last granddaddy is sort of one that if you blink too fast, you would miss the libertarianism of it, and that is South Park. Reason Magazine actually did this really funny and apt video about why all children should be forced to watch South Park, which of course in libertarianism you wouldn't force somebody to do something. Basically, South Park started back in, I believe it was 1997, and that was, I actually remember watching the premiere episode, and I've been watching it ever since. And it's about 4 boys in Colorado, in a very, very small town in Colorado, which actually is not as small as it used to be. It used to be much smaller in the 90s, and now it's not as small. And over time, the libertarianism of the creators, and they have come out and said that they're both libertarians, that has really worked its way into the show content, into the show messages, and they really push. They push in a way that's more controversial even than Penn and Teller's Showtime show was. For example, I mean, they pushed with Scientology to the point where Isaac Hayes left the show because he was a Scientologist, and then they were so upset about it that they killed his character off in a really bad way. They made fun of Al Gore so well in Man Bear Pig, and then brought him back for Imagination Land. They really are good at really giving the digs and making it funny and making it relevant and staying current and staying on top of the media as it's happening, the events as they're happening. I mean, they went, they did episodes on like the Terry Schiavo case. One of the greatest ones was the one with the Priuses, where with smug, and how, you know, Priuses are the leading cause of smug, and smug destroys part of the country, the smug storm. They really have pushed it, and they're still on the air. There's still new episodes coming. So now we're going to go into the group of sometimes libertarian. Now these are shows that are not like the Granddaddies, which were overridingly libertarian, had a consistently libertarian message, more or less. South Park, it hems and hoes, but it's still there. It's an undercurrent in the show. These are shows that are not necessarily being created as libertarian content by libertarians for libertarians, but will occasionally have a libertarian message or libertarian content. The first one is Adam Ruins Everything, which is a newer show on True TV. It started out as a YouTube series by College Humor with Adam Conover going and ruining people's held beliefs about societal norms, about history, about, you know, just general information, you know, ideas that people just believe even though they're probably actually not true. They have had some excellently libertarian episodes. The first episode of Adam Ruins Everything, which was Adam Ruins Giving, was such a libertarian episode. It was so good. You know, he goes in there and he goes into the idea of giving, the idea of charity, basically using a libertarian mindset, which is, does it do actual good, or is it just going to make me feel good? Because if it's just going to make me feel good, then it's not charity. And that kind of held consistent in that entire episode. They've done other episodes since that were, again, very libertarian or very non-aggression principle consistent. But they have had a few that are much more liberal leaning and or liberal agenda pushing as the show has gotten more popular, as they've done more episodes. They've done more like that. So I'm not going to say that they are an absolutely libertarian show. I would say if you're looking for libertarian content, give it a try, but take it with a grain of salt, because realize that not all of it, it's not, you know, it's not Penn and Teller. It's not designed as a libertarian for libertarian to spread libertarianism. It's designed by a liberal, technically from a liberal, you know, position. So the things that libertarians and liberals agree on, it's going to show. This, or the things that we should be agreeing on, it's going to show. But when it comes to something that has even a slightly political leaning narrative to it, it's going to lean left. So just keep that in mind. But it is very good at the whole common sense, like I said, non-aggression, and the whole idea of doing good versus feeling good. Now we're getting to the surprising category. Now, surprising category are shows that either have a strong libertarian lean to them or have plot lines in them that were libertarian aligned that were unexpected. The first one is one of my favorite shows. I've been watching it, I don't even know how long now. One of my friends, him and I are really into it. We've talked about going, if I could, go and sit in the audience for the filming, because they film it in Stamford, Connecticut. And he's actually been in the audience before for it. And I'm like, oh, we have to go together because we both love the show. And that is People's Court. Now, you wouldn't think this, but remember, us libertarians really like contract law. It's something that we really think about, and you know, the way the law works, it kind of is our mindset, and we like the fact that laws are logical and equal and not subject to feelings and opinions and desires. Basically love that judges have their hands tied by the law. That's kind of what I'm going at. This is a show where instead of being an actual court, it's an arbitration. Basically, the people involved have agreed to have their disagreements settled by an arbitrator, and that's who the judge is. But she is an actual judge. It's legally binding, everything like that. It's not one of those shows that they've had where it's actors presenting a case to a judge who's no longer a judge or isn't, you know, this isn't legally binding in any way. Things like that. This is actually authentic. Somebody, actually a former employer of mine, was sued and was on that show once. So it is real people, and it is the actual court case. Basically, they drop the case in civil court, and then they agree to the arbitration and show up in our people's court. But the thing that strikes me with people's court is the judge has more often than not publicly spoken about her love of capitalism. And how when people come suing saying, well, they charged me more than the person down the street was, I shouldn't have to pay it, it's not fair, she'll stand there and go, why? You are the one who chose to pay them that amount. You could have waited, you could have done this, you could have gone to somebody else, but you chose to give them, you chose to work with them and enter into this contract with them. You can't now change your mind because you don't think the amount was fair. That's not what court is about, making things fair. It's about keeping things to the way they were agreed upon. And things like that, that I'm just sitting there like, this is just awesome. It also, for me, people's court, if you're somebody who doesn't know much about the law, you don't know about contract law, you don't know about small claims, you don't know about personal injury, you don't know about landlord-tenant law, it's going to give you a pretty good education as to how those things worked. It's just an excellent show. It's been on since the 80s, since I was a kid, and I've been watching it for probably now most of my life. And I love it. And I want my son to watch it, and he watches it with me because I sit here and I say to him, if you want to be a functioning adult in society, you have to understand this. The show Flea Market Flip is actually quite libertarian minded. Basically, it's a game show where two teams of two people get together, and the show gives them money to spend at a flea market. They go back to a workshop, fix up whatever they're buying to create projects that the show has requested they make. And then they go to another different flea market and try to sell it. And whichever team makes the most net profit will win. Now you can see why this would be a libertarian fun show. The idea of putting in your labor and getting some money out of it, you can't get more libertarian than that. And running your own little business with your own labor, that's so libertarian. And I mean, it's just an awesome show if you love furniture. I mean, of course, and I've fixed up furniture myself. I'm sitting on a chair I got at a flea market and fixed up and reupholstered and painted, so I do enjoy that too. So there's that element for me as well. But there is just a general philosophy of this, you know, get it as low as possible and sell it as high as possible, make some profit for yourself. And the negotiating, the bargaining, it's just fantastic. If you haven't watched it, it is on both HGTV and there's another channel called Great American Country, so GAC, that is also airing it. As far as I know, I believe they're airing the new episodes, but don't hold me to that. That just might be what's going on right now, because all the episodes I haven't seen before have been airing on that channel and not HGTV. I don't know if they're just episodes I missed on HGTV or what's going on, but that's what's happening with at least my DVR machine. The TV show Good Times actually had a little bit of an anti-government libertarian mindedness pop up occasionally. The episode I always think of when I'm thinking about Good Times is the one where, I can't remember, I think it's the son writes to Cuba for a school project and asks for information on Cuba and the Cuban government to use as resource material for a school project, and they end up on like the government's hit list as a family because basically the government thinks that they're somehow Cuban and therefore extension Russian collaborators, and that, you know, there's something not good going on because, you know, and then Of course, the funny part, the one brother who loses his job, and they were saying, oh, you know, because the other ones lost their jobs because the government interfered and made them lose their job to try to punish them in a nice governmenty way. And he's saying, oh, so that's why I lost my job. And they're like, no, you're just not good at your job. It was a very good episode. And we watched, my husband and I have watched some of it. We haven't watched all of Good Times. But there's quite a bit of that sort of leave me alone mentality to it, which is just so quintessentially libertarian. There are some I can name as honorable mentions, like The Detour, which, however, it will throw in, again, some libertarian messages occasionally. It does lean extremely liberal, though. There's the whole thing with the gun control where they show the gun owner as the stupid, you know, redneck guy who shoots himself in the foot and makes everybody dangerous and, you know, oh, he's such a good gun owner, ha ha ha, kind of thing. There's a lot of that, but there's also a lot of them seeing themselves as perfect liberals and then seeing other liberals as like, what the heck is wrong with you? Like the SJW liberals, like what? And so there's a little bit of it there. I wouldn't put it technically on the list though, just because it really isn't. It's a good show, but it's still leaning very liberal. I mean, he's married to Samantha Bee, and she's a co-writer and co-producer of the show, and she shows up as his mother in flashbacks. It's their son who plays the son. Not his son, it's their son who plays him as a younger kid, his flashbacks. That's actually their child. So, it has its moments, but it is more liberal leaning. You also have shows like Game of Thrones and Walking Dead, which are leaning libertarian just in the sense of the lack of government, the need for people to work together, the idea of, you know, government kind of bad, the big guy is bad, we should all be left to rule ourselves, really exists in both of those shows. There are moments that are more one way and more the other. Walking Dead, even though it sounds like, okay, well, they just are pushing communism, they really don't. And that's where I think it tends to be more libertarian leaning, of more of, you know, leave us alone to manage our own affairs, and not everybody get together and we'll all be equal and we'll all do equal work for equal payout and that kind of thing. And likewise, Game of Thrones, I mean, it's so removed from our own reality that it's kind of hard to give anything that's a definitive reference point, other than the fact that they have shown repeatedly how a government entity is destructive and dangerous for the common everyday person. So that's why I would give those shows honorable mentions, but I would not include them in the actual list. However, the last one I saved the best for last, which is shocking, and it only happened one season. And that was Downton Abbey. And I know, how is it possible that a show that argues for a monarchy and the system of lords have libertarian elements in it? That's impossible. It's not. Yes, Downton Abbey is primarily a monarchist type of structure. Yes, it has to do with the lords versus the people and that kind of thing. Plus there's a lot of paternalism, which is not very libertarian. The idea that the government or the rich person or, you know, the overseer of your life has to take care of you, that kind of thing, which is not. First of all, they're fighting for a system of limited monarchy, not an absolute monarchy. England is not and has not been an absolute monarchy since 1215, since the signing of the Magna Carta, which created a limited constitutional monarchy. So this idea that they're somehow propping up an absolute monarchy is completely incorrect. It's a system they're showing that still has a rule of law where everybody is still considered equal, where the fact that he's a lord, yes, him giving a character, well, that should be impressive, but it's not. It's not going to change the outcome of the court case. And there were quite a few court cases in that show. Whoa. But it was season 6, the final season, where the anti-government, small people, individual rights, and capitalism started to come out. The Dowager Countess, she makes the greatest arguments against big government oversight into individual people and individual rights that I have ever seen on TV. When she's talking about their little tiny village hospital, that the big hospital in York is going to take it over. And she's fighting it tooth and claw. And she's accused of fighting it because, well, she'd lose her power in the community and over the hospital if we did this. And people would have better treatments, they would have access to more testing, etc., etc. And it comes out that her real reason she's fighting it is because she believes that if they join with this big hospital, they'll lose the right to control their own health care, and talks about how awful that would be when our treatments, our healthcare decisions are being managed by some bureaucrat in York. This is going to be awful for all of us. And if you haven't seen that, I'm sure there are clips of it here on YouTube. It is an absolutely amazing and compelling argument against big government takeover of parts of our personal lives. It's excellent. Also in season 6, the brother-in-law, Tom Branson, comes back from America. Now, before that, the rest of the show, he is a professed socialist. And over again, even though he's living there now and he's jumped class groups and gone from being a servant to a member of the Lord's family and eating in the house and having his own room and having the people who used to be his co-workers wait on him and all of that, he maintains he's a socialist, he's against the wealth and the house and all that. He would like to see it all done away with and says things like that. At the end of season 5, he goes to America, and after a few episodes of season 6, he comes back. When he comes back praising capitalism like nobody's business and talking about how I'm not so much of a socialist now. I've never seen it, in a place like that with just capitalism. Somebody can start as nothing and end up, as one of the most influential and wealthy people in the country just because they earned it. This is fantastic. It was amazing. It's opened my eyes. And I know me and every other libertarian watching that and every other capitalist watching that was going, yes. The whole argument that the socialist goes to America and comes back a capitalist is pretty impressive. So, did you agree with my list? Do you disagree? Are there shows I've left out that you think should have been here? Did I include something you think absolutely I'm totally wrong? Let me know in the comments. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe and give me a thumbs up. And I will talk to you soon. Bye!